Today we're
Mm,
doing our first deep dive episode.
I
It's
am
so great.
super excited to be pulled into this world that is your brain.
So, the deep dive purpose of the deep dive episodes is to give our audience like a lot of context on a specific topic. So if you are ADHD like me, this is my dream is to just dive headfirst into a topic for like 7 days and then abandon it completely. Never touch it again. So, I'm very excited about this. Today we are talking about Meghan Markle. Is she the new ballerina farm of the left? That was the initial question that entered my brain when I started watching With Love, Meghan, which is her new show on Netflix, her new quote lifestyle show on Netflix. Mallory, have you watched With Love, Meghan?
I have not.
Okay. What is on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your knowledge base surrounding Meghan Markle?
I would say I'm probably at a 5. I love the show Suits. That's where I was first introduced to her. Obviously, followed the love and romance story of Meghan and Harry. Obviously, followed the fallout of the royal family. And now, basically, what I know is they were rich, homeless people. Tyler Perry put them up. They live in California and they like do some stuff with Netflix. That's what I got for you.
Perfect. And we can actually just go ahead and end the episode there. That's about it. So,
Okay, so maybe I'm not a 5. Maybe I know more than I should.
So that is a great analysis. Yeah, I would say you're leaning around a 6 or a 7 on your scale of 1 to 10. So you probably know more than you think. So before we get into the deep dive episode, though, let's do a couple of housekeeping things. If you're not already following us on social media, what are you doing? We are at Pretty Furious Pod everywhere: Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, YouTube, all of the places. You can access our podcast basically anywhere that you get your podcasts. We would love if you would rate and review us. That is the best way to support the show. And Mallory, we can't be pretty furious without being pretty first. So, did you bring a product this week that you've been loving?
I did, but also, Maggie, we should remind people that we're doing a giveaway right now. We are looking
Yes.
to increase our following on specifically Instagram. There are so many products, thanks to Maggie, that we are giving away. It's like $500 plus worth of little things that are anywhere from sort of drugstore lines all the way to super nice skincare, makeup, etc. So if you're interested, we're going to announce as soon as we hit 1,000 followers. You, as a listener, have control over that. So help us share that giveaway, and we'd love to share those products with you. But my product, I am a sucker for Laneige.
Is that the lip mask?
This is actually the Waterbank Moisture Cream. It's kind of like a water mask, and I love to sleep in this. So I do my regular skincare routine, and then I love to just put this on before bed and wake up with my skin feeling all nice and juicy. So that's my product this week. What about you?
That's amazing. I actually have never used anything from Laneige aside from that lip sleep mask that everybody was like
What?
obsessed with. Yeah, so I need to try that.
You definitely do.
My product is now, I know that everybody was obsessed with this product. I didn't really understand the obsession with it. I guess I just never had a desire to try it. And then I got it sent to me, and now I will be purchasing it out of pocket for myself, which is unfortunate. This is the Grande Lash MD Lash Enhancing Serum. So this makes your lashes longer, comes in this cute little tube. It's very cute. And it's just a little brush. You just brush this on like your lash line at night. I have to tell you, I have never experienced lash growth quite like I have with this product.
What's happening now? Yeah.
Yeah, and I had ordered one from TikTok Shop, I think, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and it does not come close to this. I love it.
I used to use a similar product by a different brand, and I too loved it, but that product was extremely expensive. And so at one point I was like, I think I think I'll be okay with that.
I bet my life savings that
But
I
you know
could
which
guess
brand it
the
is?
product it is. Is it the
Hey
Rodin and
girly.
Fields?
Hey girly.
I knew it. I was like, it's an RNF product for sure.
It reminds me of a recent DM I just got.
I'm crying. So Meghan Markle came on the scene. Well, hang on. Meghan Sussex. That's a very big point of contention in the show, by the way, Mallory, is that her last name is not Markle anymore. It's Sussex, because she wants to share her name with her children. So there's this really awkward, uncomfortable scene in like the first episode, I think, first or second episode, where Mindy Kaling comes to her home, or the rather rented property that she uses in Montecito to film the show. And she says something like, blah, 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 Meghan Markle. And literally, Meghan Markle corrects her and says, it's Sussex now. Don't you know that? And it's very,
What?
very uncomfortable. It is like the most.
And they left it in? Does she not have like editorial?
They absolutely left it in. So that is one thing that we will talk about later on, is sort of how uncomfortable this entire show is. And let me be clear, I also loved the show. So this is a very like, there are multiple things existing at one time. So we're going to let that be. But when Meghan Sussex came on the scene in 2016, she was obviously dating Prince Harry. Everybody was obsessed with her. We sort of felt like, well, I'll speak for literally the entire general public, that we had a place to expel our energy where we were once obsessed with Princess Diana. It was very akin to like how the modern day kind of cultural zeitgeist became obsessed with Meghan Markle in the way that back in the 90s, the cultural zeitgeist was obsessed with Princess Di. So that kind of gave us a place to sort of expel that energy.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why do you think that energy was directed towards Meghan, but not Catherine?
Great question. Well, one, Catherine comes from a British family. So Catherine was born and raised in England. Meghan was an actress in LA. She was born and raised in LA. She is of mixed race. That we would be remiss to not mention that piece of it. That was a huge piece of the puzzle when Meghan came on the scene, was that everybody was talking about how her mother is Black, how it's the first member of the royal family who is of a mixed race. And so that, I think those two things combined, the fact that she's from America, the fact that she's an actress, the fact that she was on this popular TV show, and the fact that she also has the cultural background that she does, that all played a role in this broader picture. So really, all of this obsession with Meghan Markle obviously came at a cost. It came at a cost that we were sort of led into in a way in their sit down interview with Oprah back in 2021, and in the show Harry and Meghan that was on Netflix, that was in December of 22. And they talk a lot about like their really sort of complicated relationship with the paparazzi and with the media, specifically in England. The British monarchy sort of has a agreement with a specific group of newspapers and publications in England to cover them in a, relatively public light. And that basically stopped happening with Meghan. So there was a lot of back and forth, just a lot of issues that came up between the media and the royal family, specifically Harry and Meghan. So then we get to the point where Harry and Meghan separate themselves from the royal family. Everybody was obsessed with this. They moved to the States sort of in search of solace. The general public, I think, kind of assumed that when this happened, myself included, that we would sort of be let in more to their lives, right? They do this Netflix show. They announce this big partnership with Spotify. Harry announces he's writing this book. So there are sort of these instances where we think, okay, we're going to be let into their lives a little bit more. But really, they needed to work. They needed to make money because they were no longer receiving any financial aid from the royal family.
Well, I think before we go any further, though, mentioning that she is mixed race is one aspect of it. The absolute vitriol and insanity that ensued, they'll say had nothing to do with her race, but
Correct.
Anyone with two eyeballs and two ears can tell you
Correct.
that the level of scrutiny that they were under and that they were facing being a part of the royal family was in large part due to her race. When you combine that with the fact that there are obviously some inter-family things at play.
Yes.
There was obviously some stuff going on behind the scenes. It makes sense that they said for our safety and for our happiness that we're going to go.
Right. Exactly.
And that also plays into where this deep dive is going.
Yes.
It plays
Correct.
into why people have an issue with her show.
Yes.
And I think we'll get there, but
yes,
I just want to continue to draw those lines. Like,
yes,
so much of this has to do with because this girl has melanin.
yes, and that will come in a variety of ways later on as well. But yes, you are absolutely right. Like the British monarchy, if you watched Harry and Meghan on Netflix, that show does a really great job, specifically in episode 2, of detailing the kind of complexities of the British monarchy and how they treated Black people. And so that is, I think, a massive point that they were trying to make in this docuseries is, she felt really alienated by the royal family because they are racist. And that was a big point of why they decided to leave. So you're absolutely right on that. Basically, we assume that we're going to have more of a look into the royal family, or really rather the people who separated from the royal family. So when Meghan announced her lifestyle show With Love Meghan debuting on Netflix, she announced it in January. This assumption was met with a lot of excitement, a lot of, I think, curiosity about where this show was going to go. Reviews have been totally mixed across the board, ranging from really intense critiques of Meghan and how she displays attributes of the institution that her and her spouse work so hard to separate themselves from. Her tea parties that she has during the show, just saying, to some people raving, saying they enjoyed sort of this levity that she brought that we had never seen before.
Wait, pause. Tea parties during the show?
Correct. There is a tea party.
Are there biscuits?
So much tea.
Is there milk in the tea?
I believe there's cream in the tea. I believe so. And if you go to her website for her company, just quick insertion here. If you go to her website for As Ever, which is her lifestyle brand that she started from this, half of the products are like loose leaf tea mixes. So it's very, yeah.
What? This is a total sidebar, but again, if you do have ADHD, potentially you'll enjoy this. Talk to me about how, when you put together a brand, you're surrounded by people who this is their literal job.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, I don't understand how a bunch of people sat around a table. Either one, they're trolling us all. They were like, you know what you should do? Talk about how much you didn't want to be over there and then sell shit that's totally British. Or two, nobody was like, hey, potentially, maybe don't.
Right.
I'll never understand how these things get through, like being financed from product conception all the way to being on a shelf or on your website.
It's become abundantly clear in the last couple of years that whoever Meghan is working with kind of behind the scenes on all of this maybe is not like quite with it. I don't know, because
Or they just don't like her.
So, and also that's kind of another piece of this is that apparently from a variety of sources, apparently Meghan and Harry are not great people to work for. Like they've had a lot of turnover within their staff. So I think that all plays a role. Initially, this brand that Meghan has started here was supposed to be called American Riviera Orchard. And they had plenty of, yes.
Wait, I remember. Didn't they launch the Instagram for that?
Yep, they sure did. And they had a ton of copyright fuck ups. That sort of led us to As Ever and led us to the lifestyle brand. But I think that, really what we're here to talk about and really what's at sort of the core of all of this is timing. The timing is not lost on me that Meghan is launching this lifestyle brand in the midst of a Tradwife obsession, cultural obsession, the cultural and societal expectations of women and what we are meant to do in the home specifically, and how Meghan Sussex might actually just be the progressive woman's ballerina farm.
I have a question though. Is Martha Stewart not already the progressive woman's ballerina farm?
I'm glad you brought up Martha Stewart because I think she had a really interesting background in all of this, in that she dealt with some, which is not to say that Meghan did not deal with her own very special, kind of backlash from people and criticisms. But Martha Stewart was building her brand in like the 80s and 90s. She was the only woman who was doing this type of thing and making it really work. And that is why I think people attacked her so much. She had so much backlash from men specifically. Right now, what we're seeing with Meghan is we're seeing actually most of the critiques of her show, of her just generally as a person right now, are coming from women. So I think that's like a major key difference, is that Martha Stewart sort of resembled and embodied something for a different generation of women. And now we have sort of the new Martha Stewart. And now everybody loves to pick apart a pretty successful woman, so like that is a very key component of this. So I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk a little bit more about the timing of all of this. So like I said, it's not lost on me that Meghan Markle is launching this brand in the time of Tradwives, right? I don't think that's pure coincidence either. Like I said, she had sort of this major fuck up with her initial brand, which was American Riviera Orchard. Shortly after that, she sort of took a break, took a step back, and then created As Ever. So As Ever is basically just a shop of random shit she uses on the show. It's shortbread mix with flour sprinkles. It's the flour sprinkles. It's teas. It's jams. It's honeys. So very much akin to what we see if you go to ballerinafarm.com. So it is super similar to the storefront of somebody like Hannah Nealman and what they are doing with Ballerina Farm, and very similar to that brand.
Question.
Yes.
Were we ever introduced to this version of Meghan Markle at any point in her public life before now? Is it a jump to go from California Hollywood actress to now making bread with flower petals? How did we?
Not necessarily. She has always had kind of this vested interest in, quote, lifestyle. She had a blog called The Tig back in like 2014, 15, 16-ish era. And that really was her kind of coming out and saying, this is something I'm interested in. She even talks in the Harry and Meghan series on Netflix about how that turned into a business for her. She was getting clients from that. I don't know in what way, I don't know how that looked. We don't really know much about that, but that is something that she says on the show. And so I think that this concept of her being really interested in hosting for people and lifestyle and all of that, that's totally fair. I mean, she has had a clear vested interest in this for a long time. And I'm sure that she really had an interest that grew exponentially in this area as she became a member of the British royal family. Like, so she's going to actual tea parties.
She was kind of, I don't want to use the word prisoner, but her freedom was a lot less during the time frame that she was living there, stuck in the house, stuck in and around the property, that kind of thing. So it would make sense that what once was a hobby turned small business kind of transformed into maybe there wasn't much else for her to do.
Exactly. But I do think that kind of choosing to look away from how our culture has incidentally requested that we, quote, return to a simpler way of life, this very intense obsession we have right now with the 1950s and tradwifery, homesteading, canning foods in linen dresses, you know, the busty milkmaid dress that Evie magazine was selling. Like, I think that choosing to ignore all of that would be naive at best. So that's why I wanted to talk about the timing piece of all of this. So to really understand the tradwife piece of all of this, we have to understand, what is a tradwife? So a tradwife is the term traditional wife. This is a movement that is really coming on the heels of the girl boss, you know, yes, queen, slay all day, hustle and grind culture of the early 2010s.
Lean in.
Lean in, girl boss. And it's really snuggled up right next to its right-hand man, which is alt-right Christian nationalism. So we see a lot of Mormon housewives who are doing this sort of tradwife situation where they are just breeding a bunch of babies and they are drinking raw milk and they are making sourdough. And really the tradwife movement implies what I said earlier about this return to, quote, simpler times, often reminiscent of the 50s, when women were really the primary homemakers and men went to work. So women didn't make any money, but they just kept up the home and the children. So there's a lot of like tea length dresses, there's gardening, there's canning foods, there's sourdough starter, there's raw milk, submissive behavior, popping out loads of babies in close succession, there's aprons, etc., etc. Now, let's be clear that on their own, these things are not necessarily bad, except for raw milk, because literally, what the fuck? And if you're submitting to your husband, like, that's super lit. Good for you. I'm so glad that you have a good time doing that. That sounds great. Like, do your thing.
Yeah.
But you should also probably have access to like a credit card to buy groceries. And also you should probably have your own checking account and like maybe definitely a prenup. So that is a huge component of kind of what we're talking about today is tradwives, the timing of all of this, where we are politically plays a piece. Absolutely. The tradwife movement was really ushered in by a lot of like conservative influencers. So you get the idea. Arguably the most important and popular tradwife that you will hear us mention several times is one Hannah Nealman. She is the Mormon tradwife influencer who rose to fame online via her entirely made from scratch recipes, their $20,000 Aga stove, her undeniable traditional beauty. She's blonde haired, blue eyed, and she has had like 45 kids before the age of 40. So she began her lifestyle brand, Ballerina Farm, in 2017, which has now expanded into boxes of organic, locally sourced meats, homemade sourdough desserts, beeswax candles, local honey, toolkits for making your own sourdough, and they have a dairy farm on their Utah estate. An important and vital note to all of this is that Hannah Nealman is married to Daniel Nealman, the heir to JetBlue Airlines. So they are billionaires. They are the type of billionaires that can take their children to Ireland for 3 months while they attend chef school at around 16,000 pounds per head. So you get the idea. Hannah Nealman absolutely plays a role in this conversation, and we would be remiss to not mention the ballerina farm of it all.
And I would be remiss to not mention that in a former life, Hannah and I were friends, and I adore Hannah. I haven't spoken to her in a really long time. It's been really wild to watch her brand and her life from afar for the last, I would say, 12, 13 years. So it's very interesting to watch this Tradwife movement sort of explode and for Hannah to be placed at the forefront of it, and to know both Hannah, at least the 21, 22-year-old version of her, and see all of this transpire. And also, I think maybe because I do know Hannah, I push back on it a little bit because I know how hard of a worker she is. I know she's one of those people who like puts her nose to the grindstone and will get things done. I mean, she didn't graduate from Juilliard for no reason, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a part of me that's like, yes, billionaires, but also she's out there in the morning, milking the cows, doing the work, participating fully in the farm life. But we've also seen commentary and articles come out where potentially maybe that workload doesn't look the same in their family life. So I won't pretend to know any of that, but I would just like to say, the Hannah that I did know personally once upon a time, I loved tremendously. And I know she's a hard worker and a good human. So it's very wild to be like watching all of this from that perspective as well.
I think they are not mutually exclusive, right? Like, I think that you can absolutely be a tremendous hard worker. And I do think that Meghan Markle has probably busted her ass to create this brand and this vision for where As Ever wants to go. Very, very similarly to Hannah Nealman building Ballerina Farm. You can be an incredibly hard worker and also, kind of be participating in systems and structures that maybe don't necessarily like push forward the movement of feminism. They are not necessarily things that can't coexist. And so I think that's an important note to make, is that I'm not saying that I think that Meghan Markle hasn't worked her ass off to get to where she's at. I'm sure she has. And I'm sure that there is so much behind the scenes that we will never, ever understand or know. But I think drawing those parallels and making those connections of this Tradwife movement, how this all came to be, and drawing in how Meghan Markle is kind of playing a role in furthering this movement almost, is a really important connection to make. We're going to talk a little bit about Princess Diana. So this is one thing that I have not heard anybody really discuss a whole lot yet, which is I listened to several podcasts in preparation for this episode. I listened to Culture Study by Anne Helen Peterson. She does a great breakdown on this show, and more so through the lens of just doing a critique on the show itself and not necessarily a critique of Meghan or the royal family. I listened to Kate Kennedy's Be There in 5 episode talking about Meghan Markle and just sort of her thoughts on the show. But I haven't heard anybody address sort of what I think is a very clear elephant in the room, which is Princess Diana. Like, hello. So the public's obsession, particularly in America, with the royal family and Princess Diana has been steadfast for decades. We love the premise of a monarchy, but like, LOL, if you're human and have a pulse, you were captivated in some capacity by Princess Diana. I remember we went to Paris over the summer, and we went to the spot where her car crash happened. That's the most morbid shit of all time, but people do it, and people leave flowers still. It's a whole thing. Her wedding dress did an entire run through Putnam museums and stuff like that across the country. So this obsession with her has just continued even after she's been long gone. This obsession is really twofold, I think. A, we view members of the royal family in the States celebrities. Their lives are incredibly elusive. We want to look inside at their bizarre rituals, their ceremonies, the guy who comes out and rings the fucking bell and like announces that a baby's been born. We want to know what that's like because we don't have that in America. And B, I think the American general public sort of tends to be obsessed with tradition. It gives us a lot of comfort that shit doesn't change, right? So the
Yeah.
royal family is, and the British monarchy are experts at tradition. That is what their entire lives are. And so that I think accentuates our obsession with the British monarchy, with the royal family, and just with their trades that they do. We eat that shit up. I think we're kind of obsessed with Princess Di because she ushered in sort of this era of like relatability that we hadn't really seen within the British monarchy, which is to
Yeah.
say that she was incredibly charming. She was a humanitarian. She was funny. She was smart. She was articulate without being stuffy. And of course, because we all want to know the intricacies of the most tragic shit of all time, her death was of equal obsession for the American people. So the press's harassment of Princess Di and of Meghan feels very equivalent. This time, Meghan had this added layer of racism on top. The royal family has never had a person of color who has come into their lives.
I also think it's worth noting that it's not just mixed race. It's also her socioeconomic status. So even though she was an actress and working and had her own life and her own money, so to speak, that's not the family social dynamic or socioeconomic status that she came from. So I wonder, I think we all have to wonder if she were British and from an affluent family in Great Britain or in Europe in general, would this dynamic have looked slightly different? Maybe if they were quote unquote respected people or people who were of society in that way, would her race have been such an issue? But when you combine her family, her parents, their kind of crazy antics, their socioeconomic status, it adds a whole other layer, which I think is very interesting.
That's sort of the parallel between Meghan, Princess Diana. There's this cultural obsession with the both of them. So the Tradwife movement almost always stirs up a conversation about politics because they are intricately woven together. The alt-right would prefer that your wife stay home and keep sweet because patriarchy, we love it. And the royal family and the monarchy is no stranger to patriarchy, as you can imagine. A great example is Diana's separation from Prince Charles amid his very public affair with Camilla, and how tabloids really exploited Diana for a variety of reasons, ones that were almost always steeped in patriarchal notions. So, i.e., commentary on her clothing, her weight, her beauty, and her partners post Charles. So, Meghan coming into the royal family, she almost represented like this new era of a Diana adjacent period. And obviously, she's marrying Diana's son. So, we're all immediately obsessed with that piece of it, the most eligible bachelor in arguably the world. But her life was sort of the quintessential representation of like a fairy tale. To your point, she grew up working class. She's a woman of color. She was a working actress. And now she's entering the royal family. So it's something that every girl dreams about from childhood. Like we all think about that scene in Princess Diaries where she's like, I'm a princess? What? She also really possesses so much of what the public knew and remembered about Diana, which is that she had a really warm disposition. She was really charming. She had a love of personal style, all of those things. And that's something that Harry even echoes in the series Harry and Meghan, is he talks about how similar Meghan is to his mom. And so that I think is just something worth noting.
So I feel like I have a really good people meter reader, right? I don't know how else to say that. I'm a Capricorn and I'm an Enneagram 8, and somebody can walk in the room and I'm like, something's off. Don't know what it is. Don't always know what it is, but I can tell you that something is not right. And the more the Oprah interview transpired, the more I was like, I think this bitch was playing a long con.
Really not be the first to say that.
She is an actress. Hello. And I've seen her work. She's a pretty good actress. Putting on the Diana act as someone who walked around the whole country as Miss America for a year is possible.
Yeah.
It's possible to do it. It's possible to put on that show and then to turn around behind closed doors and not be that person at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I won't say I've done it a lot, but there are days when I did it.
You definitely are not alone in that. I think that's a very common theme and thread of conversation that we hear a lot is something doesn't feel right, something feels very off, specifically since they made their exit from the royal family. And whatever that may be, you know, it could be a variety of things that we have, again, no insight into all of that. But I'm so glad you brought up the Miss America piece of it, because so much of this is performative, right? There's a performance happening. There's a performance happening in her show. There was a performance happening when they were members of the royal family. There is, in some capacity, even when you get on TikTok and you make a video about fuck all, you know, it could be as simple as me talking about this fucking lash serum. That is a performance in some capacity. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that they have been performing for decades. Like, she has been doing it in the very traditional sense, in the sense that she's an actress. Harry has been doing it because he's had to, as a member of the royal family. So much of what you do as a member of the royal family is performative.
I mean, let's be honest. The entirety of the royal family existing still is a performance.
Exactly.
They
and that's why
serve
people love it.
literally no purpose, except for, they might argue, to be like ambassadors of goodwill. I don't know, but
Right.
they don't do anything.
Like I said, you know, this all kind of, I think your line of thinking and your train of thought very much happened in 2020, early 2020, when Harry and Meghan made their formal separation from the royal family. Their Netflix series, as I mentioned, Harry and Meghan, that was released in December of 2022 via a massive $100 million deal with Netflix.
I'm sorry. Their deal was for the show, or their deal was like to do multiple things for $100 million?
Multiple things. It's a lot of money. And that doesn't include the, I believe, $20 million Spotify deal that they had signed with Meghan's initial podcast called Archetypes. Upon leaving the royal family, basically Harry and Meghan planned to like carve their own path. They moved back to California. They planted roots in Montecito, California, which is a just Nancy Meyers wet dream. Like, it is the most gorgeous area. Their kitchen is like hand carved stone, and it's gorgeous. So they move, they get settled. It's still COVID. Meghan has another baby. Yeah, basically they have to fulfill these deals that they have made with both Spotify and Netflix. So Meghan announced the release of With Love, Meghan in January of 2025. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the show itself. I read a review from Vulture, and it's from a woman named Catherine Van Arendonk. I don't know how to say her last name. And she says that Meghan, quote, charters new terrains of unrelatability in this series. And I thought that quote was... I know, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. She's like, capitalism is killing us all, and fuck you and your show. So Catherine was not a fan. And listen, like, I grew up coming home from school, and before I would go to dance class, I would watch the Food Network, which had the Holy Trinity after school. They had Sandra Lee, Semi Homemade with Sandra Lee. Then you had Ina Garten, you had Barefoot Contessa, and then you had Everyday Italian with Giada De Laurentiis. And
first of all, pause. I came home every day after school and watched TRL. What are you talking about, Maggie? Why were you watching the Food Network?
I just loved watching these people make food. I really don't know what it was. I think it was that my mom never kept any garbage in our house when I was growing up. My mom was a dental hygienist, so I never had access to pop or sweets or anything like that. So I watched these women make these fucking insane desserts, and Sandra Lee would put like half a bottle of vodka. This is actually getting sad. Yeah, it is really sad. Anyway, so like, listen, my childhood was lovely, so let's not get it twisted.
In the exact opposite vein, this is insight into just how practical of a human. Like, everything to me is about practicality and efficiency and get shit done. And I never watch cooking shows or anything of the sort because I can't taste it at the end. That pisses me off. I just sat here and watched you do this whole thing and I can't even participate.
Then do not watch this show, because you will be super disappointed. So
do not want it.
So, but what I do think is so incredibly jarring about this show, Mallory, is that it is deeply uncomfortable. It is insanely uncomfortable. Yet it is, I think, for the people who watched Giada De Laurentiis after school, it is comforting in the same breath.
That is the thing that's confusing to me, even though I haven't watched it, it's confusing to me, the hate and the backlash that I've seen online. Obviously, I've seen people's TikToks and all their commentary about it. And I'm like, how is it any different than every other unrealistic, stupid studio show where they're making the thing that they already had made and pulled it out of the oven. Is it different? Am I just missing something?
Well, given just everything we've talked about, the background, that is a major component, I think, of everybody has a bias about Meghan Markle because she was a member of the royal family. They left the royal family. It was this big drama. So there's that piece of it. I think another piece of it is she brings on a guest every single episode. And the guest that she brings on is a close friend of hers. So the first episode, she brings on her makeup artist of over 10 years. Second episode, I think, was Mindy Kaling. And then she brings on the founder of CEO of Tatcha, who's a friend of hers. She brings on like Alice, I think her name's Alice Walker. She's the pioneer behind the farm to table movement. She brings on all of these guests who are quote unquote friends. But even though these people are quote friends of hers or people that she like just really admires and respects, the interactions feel so forced and feel so uncomfortable. I cannot stress enough that it just kind of feels like everybody is so excited to leave.
Okay, so you started out by saying she brings on her friends, and then you said her first guest was her makeup artist,
Correct.
which I am very, very aware that many people who are in the public eye, their makeup artist becomes one of their best friends because you spend so much time together. I totally understand that. I would just say that if I were in a position to have a show where I started bringing on my friends, I might start with my actual like childhood friends, my
Right.
closest girlfriends, like, my actual friends.
Yeah.
Not people who are paid to be my friend.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make because when you look at the people who did interviews for Harry and Meghan, the Netflix series that was released a few years prior, they interview a lot of their close friends. And only from what I could see, only two of those friends were featured on With Love, Meghan. It kind of felt like her makeup artist, who is like this lovely, almost flamboyantly gay man, comes on the show and she makes him do like 10 different fucking things. First of all, she makes him make a meal with her and they make this pasta dish and then she makes him make dessert with her. And then she like goes out to her beehive and gets fresh honey. And then they use the beeswax to make beeswax candles. So it really just feels like he's sort of like, I can't fucking wait for this to be over. And so it also feels like there wasn't a ton of direction on Netflix's part. Like, I don't think that Netflix even really knew what this show was going to be until they like made the show. So another key thing I want to bring up here is that when I was researching this episode, I listened to, like I said, an episode of Culture Study by Anne Helen Peterson. She's lovely and iconic. And then I listened to the Be There in 5 episode covering this by Kate Kennedy. And both make a really insanely valid point, which is that anytime that Harry and Meghan like let the public in any capacity, we kind of shit all over everything that they do. So this show was not necessarily like an invitation into her home. I think that we all thought it would be, not only from the sense that they literally are not in her home. It was not an invitation into her marriage, as she rarely references Harry even by his first name. It was not an invitation into her personal life or her upbringing, as she rarely shares any like personal anecdotes. The only time she really does is on episode 3 with this chef named Roy Choi, who is also from LA. And they talk about kind of like growing up in LA, but that's basically it. So to put it plainly, my major takeaway from all of it was that this was not an invitation of any kind.
So what are they talking about? If they're not like talking about her life, if they're not super intellectual or stimulating conversations between her and her guests, what are they talking about?
It's very above board, very surface level conversations. Either she might ask them a question about, the thing that they're making. So for example, when she has her friend on who is the CEO of Tatcha, the skincare company, they're making a mask. And they also do a dumpling recipe during that episode where the woman talks about her upbringing and how her mom used to make this recipe. And then the other kind of piece of what she's talking about here is like, quote, how to be a good host and how to be a hostess. She never says anything other than hostess. I just kind of felt that to be intriguing that she always like uses the feminine. She almost always says hostess instead of hosting or anything like that. So I found that to be really fascinating. But, very much so like how Hannah Nealman stays very above board on her social media. She keeps it very light and fun, behind the scenes footage of building their dairy farm and all of that. You will likely never receive like an in-depth conversation from Hannah on her thoughts on Mormonism, our political climate, how critics argue that she is antithetical to the feminist movement. It's just not on brand, right? So this felt very akin to that. That really is kind of what this is just sort of a quote lifestyle show where they talk about hosting and they, sort of gab about how to make your guest in your home feel lovely by giving them homemade Epsom salt for their soaks at night. She calls them soaks.
You grew up in California. It's a bath. You took a bath.
It's a bath. And also, let's be clear, I would never take a bath at someone else's home unless they lived in a $5 million Montecito home. So I couldn't really help but think, all the while that there's sort of this enormous elephant in the room that no one is addressing, which is that the person who she just so aggressively identified as a feminist in the past, this feels very akin to the thing that women are trying to escape from.
Meghan Markle has said on multiple occasions, I'm sorry, Meghan Sussex has said on multiple occasions that she like wrote letters to the president or somebody about, I don't even remember what it was, but she was very like Little Miss independent protester, like that type of thing, to come out with this very milquetoast, watered down, surface level version of yourself baking and tending to bees is a bit of a departure there.
Yeah. She did a speech for the UN in 2015 on feminism. Like she did a whole presentation on how she believes herself to be a feminist. 2018, they did shortly before her and Harry got married. Her and Catherine and William and Harry all went and did a speaking engagement where she talked about the Me Too movement. She was roasted for that. So there is sort of this like side of it where you're like, well, you should continue talking about feminism because it's the thing that like you seem to really have once cared about. And this other piece of it where every time she talks about feminism, people shit all over her.
People are shitting all over her for doing this show. The lesson to be learned here is that people are just not going to like you. It's taken me until 36 years old to go, okay, well, if you just don't like that, that's fine. You don't have to like me. I really don't give a shit. So the question remains to me, her doing this show is not her saying, I don't still hold all these beliefs. It's just a shame that this show is in exact opposition, at least the way it's being presented to me from you. This show is in opposition to all of those values that she once used to talk so freely about.
No, you're dead on. Like, and I will be really curious to know your thoughts on all of this once you maybe take in a little bit of the show or just, watch an episode or two. But it is just all very jarring. And when we talk about this concept of relatability with Meghan and with the royal family, obviously nobody's going to be pleased with what we get in that regard. She was once a royal. You can't relate to somebody like that.
We're never going to know what that feels like.
Right. When we're talking about the relatability piece. There is no time in the day for the average woman to make a homemade rainbow fruit platter for her children for breakfast in the morning, which is a real thing that she does. There are no resources for a single mother to go into her garden and pick fresh vegetables to make a homemade dinner for her family. She does not.
Can I just interject and say that I feel like we're doing something fancy by toasting the kids' sandwiches before they go into their lunchbox?
I think what ultimately is another piece of it that is bothersome is that she frames the placing of like this rainbow platter thing for her children for breakfast. She frames that as sort of like a really small thing you can do to elevate the experience for your loved ones and to make it something where you put thought and care into their experience. And it's like, for most women, the thought and care is like them staying alive for their children and them like being able to just provide a home or like a stable household. So, yeah, it's like the average woman just does not have the resources for flower sprinkles or hemp hearts or lavender sprigs. So, while this was not, let's be clear, advertised as a show with the theme of relatability at the helm, I think that most people expect Meghan to be relatable in some capacity because she has positioned herself as such. She positioned herself as the liberal, feminist royal person who joined the royal family, liberal, relatable, fuck you monarchy, and in leaving the royal family, always talks about how she grew up working class in LA. Like those things all contribute to this perception of what the public has of her, which is that she is, quote, relatable. So this was sort of, in my opinion, her not really sharing anything, not striving to be the relatable, entirely warm princess that we knew her to be in a lot of ways.
Because Maggie, it was an act. Continue.
Mallory hates Meghan. I mean, I think in a lot of ways it was letting us into sort of this new side to Meghan. So almost her proverbial fuck you to everyone who wants more from her and from her family, which we continuously do because, you know, whenever we ask, they usually give us something in return.
Do we? Because here's the deal about Harry and Meghan. Maybe I do hate Harry and Meghan. Oh no, I don't. No, I don't. No, but here the legitimate truth is the world is literally crumbling under our feet. I'm not thinking about Harry and Meghan ever. I don't
Right.
want anything from Harry and Meghan. They are the ones who, and you just informed me of this, signed a $100 million contract with Netflix. I don't want anything from them. I don't care if she's real or relatable or if she's here or if she's not. And I mean that in the sense of in my face from a publicity standpoint.
Not like alive or dead.
So, like, I mean, if she wants her show to be a fuck you to everyone's expectations of her, that's fine. But I just don't think many people have an expectation of them. I don't. We're not thinking
That's a
about
fair-
that. We're
Yeah.
literally trying to save our democracy.
I think that's such a fair point. And also, I think that that ties in perfectly with like the broader themes that we're talking about here of like tradwives and feminism and like our collective and like what we're all experiencing. It's like, yes, we all, I think at some point, or the people who are really interested in the pop culture that is surrounding like the British monarchy and the royal family. I think we all did really want something from them at one point or another. And I think to your point, now we almost are like, man, now that you're giving it to us, like, fuck you, dude. Like, democracy is crumbling and we don't give a shit about billionaires anymore or very wealthy individuals.
You got out of the public eye over there. Live your life. And you know what? If what they're passionate about is making content or is doing that type of thing. Obviously, she's been in front of a camera for a long time. If that's what they're passionate about, then do it. Take your feminism, take your activism and turn it into art. Content and art shapes culture and society. Use the money and the influence and the fame that you have to create something that actually changes culture, not perpetuates what we're seeing on a daily basis.
I think too that is, you know, that is the point of like sort of the tradwife trend, which is that it offers an option of escapism for women. So that is, of course, only if you have the financial means and the spouse to give you that option in the first place. So Meghan, I think, feels very much so like the rise and fall of like the girl boss. She got really tired from climbing a ladder, so she said, let's make a home instead. And I think that like the obvious point here being that Meghan just happened to fall in love with someone whose upbringing and family supported this transition. I think that that is like a major component of all of this. As we said, this is all turning into a business. As ever is the lifestyle collection that Meghan has teased for a few weeks now. They had their official launch yesterday as of this recording, and she sold out everything in the first day, within the first couple of hours actually of being live.
First of all, I had no idea that this launched this past week or yesterday. I didn't know that, so obviously kudos to you for this timely subject.
I will tell you that I was on the wait list, the email list, and I got the email and I couldn't even get anything.
Maggie, you were ready to support the feminism to Tradwife pipeline.
Listen, I really just wanted to see the prices on everything because they weren't posted until yesterday. And I just want to make it abundantly clear that there's a box of shortbread cookies with flour sprinkles included in them, which is something she makes on the show, on the website. And it is a $14 box of shortbread cookies and shipping is $7. So you are paying a whopping $21 for a box of cookies. Circling back to the initial question of like, is Meghan's the ballerina farm of the left? She does feel very much like the Tradwife for progressives. She's making beeswax candles, sure, but she's doing so in, flowy linen pants with a Zara shirt, and she's popping bubbly all the time. She literally opens a bottle of bubbly every single episode with somebody in her kitchen, and it's 11 a.m. She represents sort of like the very thing that so many modern day feminists strive for, which is being both. She chimes in with her platitudes of, quote, it doesn't need to be perfect. She says that all the time, while possessing the most sickeningly beautiful, like, handwriting I've ever seen and wrapping gifts in a way that would put the employees at Nordstrom to shame. She has given speeches, as I mentioned, at the UN on women's rights. She has spoken out about racial inequality, specifically within the British monarchy, but she also loves plating a beautiful meal. So are we upset that Meghan has a lifestyle we can't attain because she possesses an obscene amount of wealth? Are we upset that her lack of relatability was palpable throughout the show, with what felt like almost forced smiles the entire duration? Are we pissed that she can bake an excellent quiche while wearing a $60,000 emerald cut pinky ring? Yes, I Googled it to know the cost. Are we pissed that it was a chance to have another peek into the intimate details of her life and we didn't get it? Maybe it's all these things. So, at any rate, the reality is that those in the public eye don't necessarily owe us their inner thoughts and workings. But this entire thing does sort of like beg the question for me of where we go as women. Can we really have it all? Shows like this with Love Meghan continuously promise us this, that you can sprinkle sort of, dried flowers and hemp hearts on everything while building an empire. And what they fail to mention is sort of like at what cost, monetarily, mentally, emotionally, ethically. Only Meghan will know that for now. And all we can really do in the meantime is, find small ways to bring joy to our daily lives, which is a very major component of this show. Mallory, without further ado, that is the Meghan Markle rabbit hole I went into this week.
Thank you so much for sharing it with me. I have to admit, you didn't sell me on watching the show. I did walk away from this conversation reiterating a couple of things. And the first one is everything you do in life, there's always going to be people who hate on it. So just do whatever the fuck makes you happy. The second thing is I realized that while I do know more about Meghan and Harry than I realized I did, I don't want to. I actually don't care. And so, Meghan, if you hear this, first of all, I'm sorry for coming off like such a hater. I enjoy most of the things that you do, but I just need you to know that go live your life, girl. We don't care.
We don't.
We don't expect anything from you. It's okay.
Exactly. I think that might be the problem, is I think that so many people really maybe wanted to care and can't find the energy, or can't find a fuck to give, for lack of a better term. So I think that's really where we're at with Meghan and Harry, is they have been so kind of overtly in the public eye for the last, 5+ years. And I think with where we are politically in America, people are just, man, we only have a certain amount of fucks to give in a day, and Meghan and Harry don't get them.
As ever.